Will you pray with me? Holy One, may the words of my lips and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. You heard this story before, right? Do you remember what happened just before it? Here's what's going on. God and Moses have led the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt, and Moses has gone up on the mountain to receive the law that's to be given by this new God that has freed the people. And he's gone too long, way too long, the people think. They start getting antsy. They don't want to wait anymore. They don't want to wonder or wait or study. They start drumming their fingers on their knees, saying, when is this guy going to be back? He told us about this new God that would bless us, and he's been gone for too long. We need a God like we recognize, a God like they had at home, a God like they have in other places. Aaron, will you do something about it? Aaron's Moses' brother, and so Aaron offered an easy solution to the problem. Don't wait, don't wonder, don't study. Do what's easy. Do what everybody else is doing. And so they all pulled off their jewelry and they put it in a pot and melted it down and cast a golden calf for them to worship. And then they threw a party and they reveled and went wild, the story says. And this is what God has seen that Moses hasn't seen when he's up on the mountain. God looks down and sees it. Moses doesn't know what's going on. And so then we hear the interchange between them in today's story. And after that, do you know what happens next? If you end the story here, you might think that God is full of wrath and anger, that God is always just waiting to throw a thunderbolt at the people, and that Moses is always full of peace and reasonableness. It's the humans that talk back God from the edge. Don't do what you said you were going to do, God, says Moses. Why would you want the Egyptians to think that you brought us out just to kill us? Calm down. Count to 10. Take a deep breath, God, says Moses. If you end the story there, you think that God is the crazy one and Moses is the reasonable one. But here's what happens next. Moses comes down off the mountain and sees what's going on. They hear the sound of reveling from so far off, they think that people are attacking the camp, but they get close and realize it's just a big party. So Moses takes the golden calf, burns it, crushes it, scatters it on the water, and then makes the people drink every drop of that golden calf. And you could say, well, there's a lesson to be learned there, a good argument that we will drink the bitter dregs of our own mistakes, right? That would be a good lesson to take from there, but it doesn't stop there. Then Moses calls out to the people and says, anyone who is faithful to God, to me. Anyone who believes in the God who has freed us, join me at my side. And the story says that the sons of Levi came. The tribe of Levi, one of the 12 tribes, who would later go on to be the functionaries and priests in the temple hundreds of years later, the temple in Jerusalem. This is their origin story right here. This is how they get their job. He says, anyone who believes in God, come to me, and they come. And he says, now strap your swords to your sides and go out amongst the people and start killing. And don't just kill anyone, kill your own brother. Kill your own friend. And so they do. And the story says that the Levites, the sons of Levi, killed 3,000 Israelites that day. And it is by killing these 3,000 people, especially by killing their own brothers, that they become consecrated for service in the temple. Does this story sound familiar to you? Someone decides that someone else is practicing idolatry and says, anyone who believes in the one true God, come to me and go out and slay. And 3,000 people go down to dust. On this day, on September 11th, 2016, does this story sound familiar to you? that the only way to cleanse the earth of idolatry is to kill the idolaters, and the only way to sanctify oneself is with the blood of those idolaters. Does this sound familiar to you? It's so easy to claim that the kind of violence that happened 15 years ago on this date, that it belongs to the Muslims. That it's just Islam that has that kind of impulse buried in its heart that a very few, let us be clear, a very few people reach into and use to do terrible damage. It is so easy to claim that. But that is our story too. This is our Bible that this story of killing 3,000 idolaters is in. Friends, the devil is inside our house. If you stop reading where we stopped reading today, it seems like God is angry all the time and Moses is reasonable, but you read just a little further along and you find out that it is Moses who fails to stay his own hand and God who refuses to destroy the people. God said God was going to destroy the people and then didn't. Moses said, "Don't destroy the people," and then he went and did. And if you take everything in this story at face value, read it all uncritically, and model your own behavior on it, you might end up acting like Moses and the Levites. If not literally, then at least spiritually. And if you did, you would not be the first person in Christian history, would you? You would not be the first person to look at someone else and say, "You're doing it wrong. You're worshiping wrong. You're believing wrong. You're acting wrong. And so you must die so that I can be consecrated." But there are at least two models in this story. I just said two models you could choose to follow, I think. One is Moses, kill the people for idolatry, drive planes into their buildings and bring them down. Another is God, whose wrath burned hot at first, but who in the end relented, forgave, decided not to destroy. And so another easy thing you could do when reading this story is to say, well, just always follow God. Do whatever God does. But the truth is that in other stories in this same Bible, other places, both Testaments, not just the Old, let's be clear, it seems to be God who does the destroying. And the narrative of a loving and forgiving deity takes a dark turn into a nasty corner. So what then? If we were in seminary, they would say you need a lens. You've heard this metaphor before, right? Something that you hold up to your eye and read the text through, a way to choose between oppositional points of view when the Bible seems to contradict itself, or when the way forward is unclear. You need a lens, a way to separate the wheat from the chaff, to see where you should go. And you might choose something sophisticated, an academic-sounding lens, a feminist lens, a post-colonial lens. Or you might choose something simpler. You might just choose love. When faced with a contradiction, with a God and a human, and you have to choose who to follow, or a God's action here and a God's action here, and you have to choose which one you should model your own behavior on, you might just choose the place in the Bible where it says this: God is love. And when you see a God who seems not to be acting as if he were love, you might choose to believe that that's not God at all. You need a lens, they say, and here's the thing: you have one, more or less. You have one or more than one, whether you like it or not, whether you've chosen one or not. You're reading through a lens, whether you like it or not. And if you haven't chosen one, then one has been given to you. If you do not choose, and choose intentionally, you will end up reading the Bible with all the assumptions of your class, or your race, or your personal experience, or the social and political leanings of your Facebook friends. Do you really want that? You have a lens now, whether you like it or not, and the only question is whether you've chosen it or it's chosen you, and if you are not careful, then you will be the one day taking a dark and nasty turn into a corner, or maybe a skyscraper. If you're looking for a way to choose one way to start is with a Bible study. We have one starting up next week. You can learn about it after church or just show up. One way is to show up here in worship every Sunday. One way is to read on your own, but you must choose or it will choose you. Moses goes up the mountain and takes an uncomfortably long time. And the people do what's easy, work with the lens that has been given them, and they build a statue like everybody else in the neighborhood instead of doing the long, hard work of waiting. God looks down at the people and chooses, after a moment of anger, to read the situation with a lens of forgiveness and forbearance. Moses comes down off the mountain and watches the people through the red-tinted spectacles of vengeance and punishment. You could choose either way and claim biblical justification for your actions. One lens has led to the deaths of 3,000 people on at least 2 occasions, and the other leads to life. And the choice is yours. It's always yours. Amen.